Welcome everybody. My name is Clay Eals. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society. How many have been way over to West Seattle? Something like, all right, about a half of you. Okay. Well, we are what we lovingly tell people who have not been to West Seattle is, if you can, and you can do this to anybody else. If you've heard, if you're talking about West Seattle and they say, huh, where's West Seattle? Just hold your right hand out in the air, palm out, and the rest of Seattle is the hand and we are the thumb. We are a peninsula. We are bounded on three sides by water. And so we are a very separate part of, we are a part of Seattle, but we're also apart from Seattle all at the same time. And we're also the birthplace of Seattle. We are where Seattle was founded. Just some housekeeping things. You all know where the restrooms are out here. What Colleen has told me is if you're coming in and out for whatever reason, please go through this door or this door with the white sign on it. Don't try to go through the glass because she says she's closed that up in case the espresso machine goes on and it's very loud. Okay, and then there should be evaluation forms that you can fill out and leave. I'll put this up front. You can just leave it in here on your way out. Come on in. Come on in your room. I'm glad you're here today. I think literally this is the coolest place right now. If not figuratively, literally. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start this off with a 5-minute video, and then we're going to cover some stuff, and then I'm going to end it up with a video. And I beg your indulgence here. And what this video is, basically you know the theme of this, and I'm going to try to relate two stories. We're going to tell two stories today and relate everything in those stories to this theme. And so what I want you to see is the end result of the first story. And this is just a 5-minute summary. I'm Executive Director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, and I speak for our board, our staff, our volunteers, and our donors in saying that we are absolutely thrilled at how many of you are here today for this once-in-a-lifetime occasion. To unveil this totem pole that stood for 40 years from 1966 to 2006 at Belvedere Viewpoint Park at the top of Admiral Way. And I'm especially pleased to see how many young people are here today to witness history. Do you know that there are more than 950 school children here today? Who here is a student from Lafayette Elementary School? Make some noise. How about who here is from Alki Elementary School? And who here is from Schmitz Park Elementary School? All right. Now, when I am in the presence of children, I am guided by the words of our late founder, Elliott Cowden. Nearly 20 years ago, Elliott proposed a resolution that was passed unanimously by our board. And the resolution clearly states that our highest priority is the interests and the needs of young people. And this marvelous occasion today is the ultimate illustration. Okay, we're going to move along quickly here. Please welcome Seattle Mayor Ed Murray.
Wow, this is an incredible sight. It's good to see all of you. So it's good to be home. It's good to be on the street I grew up on. It's good to be sitting next to Marcy Johnson, who I used to play with in this very house. So, you know, it was fun to go to see the Seahawks at the White House, but this is more fun.
Please welcome King County Executive Dow Constantine.
Thank you so much. You know, my 4-week-old daughter is just over here to the side, really enjoying the ceremony. And I hope that she will have the same beautiful experience growing up in West Seattle that I had and that you are having. This totem pole was erected the year before I started kindergarten at Schmitz Park Elementary School. And I hope that it will be able to remind all of you students, whether you live here in West Seattle for the rest of your life, or whether you end up far away and return occasionally, remind you of what a wonderful community this is, a supportive and loving community, and help you remember the great years of growing up here in West Seattle. Thank you for being here today, and congratulations to the Historic Society for bringing our totem pole back.
Before we shout it, I want you to know that on the count of 3, all the dignitaries will pull on the streamers, and for the very first time, we will see our newly restored Admiral Totem Pole right here at our birthplace of Seattle Log House Museum. Okay, children, let's shout it out. Every single one of you can say from now and to forevermore, I was here when the pole was unveiled.
Okay, you can see why this was quite the big deal for us.
Wow, yeah.
I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, and we will start with the first slide. And I'm going to be coming back and forth. This, whoop, we had it. It'll come back. It's searching. Anyway, the theme of this is getting personal, and the phrase that I've used is something I've stolen from my wife, who got it from an essay that she read about 6-7 years ago. And she made it available to me, and I've been using it ever since. And you don't even have to read the essay to understand it, just read the headline, which is, "The original social media is face to face." And I was talking with a woman about 6 months ago about this, and she says, "Oh, I get it. Facelook." Not Facebook, Facelook. And the reason this is so compelling is that it's my contention that that the best things happen when you are face-to-face. The best things happen when you are in real time. And it was so compelling. Some of you were in the human resources session just an hour ago, and there was a slide up that one of the speakers was referencing the New York Times, talking about how today things are so busy in our work environments that the headline is, "We don't have time to be nice." No time to be nice. And think about for a minute why that is happening today. You know, time is always a pressure, but why is that happening particularly today? And I would submit that part of the reason is that we are expected to do more because we're always so-called in social contact with everybody every hour of every day. And you know, there could be some of you even during this next hour who you are contacting people on your phones. You know, it's endemic. It's happening to all of us. But there are powerful financial forces at work 24/7 to make us do that. It makes people money to get us to be jumping at every step of the way, to be in touch with people and communicating back and forth through texting or email or whatever. And we tend to think that that is the way to communicate these days. And it's my contention, it's our organization's contention, that the real key to making the best things happen for our museum, for our organization, the best things happen as a result of personal relationships, one-on-one relationships that you build up over time. And so what I'm going to do is run through a couple of projects that we have done that have been enormous for us and show you how those things were accomplished because of personal relationships. It's very simple. It's not anything new to any of us, but I think it will help us to know that it is possible to make a choice, to not be emailing people all the time, but to go look them in the eye to get things done, and it'll be even better that way. Now what I'm going to start out with is, I've got a long set of slides, but the first chunk of them is the presentation that we used as an organization in the year prior to our totem pole unveiling. So pretend that you're the Rotary Club right now, or pretend you're the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm taking you through this in person. I'm not emailing you, I'm not texting you, but we are talking about this project. And the project is preserving the Admiral Totem Pole. Some of you who have been to West Seattle, maybe when you were a little kid, even some of you remember before the Space Needle. Seattle's Space Needle before the Space Needle was our Admiral Totem Pole. And this viewpoint was the one that people would come to have their picture taken, and they still do. And I'm going backwards, so go forwards, Clay. We had a totem pole there. We've had one since 1939. How many of you have been to the Ye Old Curiosity Shop or have heard of that, downtown Seattle? The same guy who founded that lived in West Seattle, and he lived just a few blocks from this spectacular viewpoint from which you could see at the time the Smith Tower, the tallest building west of the Mississippi. You know, Space Needle changed all of that, but in 1962. But he saw this beautiful viewpoint at the top of Admiral Way, but it was kind of an eyesore. There were weeds, there were, it was overgrown, and he kept writing letter after letter to the city saying, you got to fix this up. And finally he said, if you clean this up, I'll give you a totem pole. And so they cleaned it up, and he did. And he gave the city a totem pole in 1939, and this is the one. And it was 1 year before he died. He got to see this happen. Here's an article from the Seattle Times accepting the offer from, his nickname was Daddy. I still haven't been able to figure that out. Joseph E. Stanley, Daddy Stanley. And this is the view I'm talking about. You would come and get your picture taken with the totem pole and the Smith Tower in the background. You'd come up Admiral Way Hill. This became famous. This was the symbol of the city. And the one thing to understand about it is that it was carved by the Haida Indians up in Alaska and British Columbia. This notion that, and you see them all over Seattle, colorful totem poles, that they're not indigenous to Seattle. They came from way up north. And they came from way up north, and they were only here being the Seattle area, because of money, because of the gold rush, because of the AYP, the Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition in 1909. People loved them. They brought them down here. They made money for people. People were hired to carve them. And this pole was truly the symbol of Seattle. I mean, it was on festival programs. This is from 1952, the same viewpoint. It was, even when I was a little kid, it was on the front of the Seattle phone book 3 years in a row. It was our totem pole on the front. And over time, from 1939, it deteriorated. And so there were times when the city fixed it up. Here's a clipping from, again, from the Seattle Times where they're giving it a facelift. Sometimes when they reported about this stuff, it was not the most sensitive way. Take a look. We have, there's one to come, I'm sorry. But they took it down to give it so-called surgery, put it back up again. It was on the cover of the Sunday Pictorial magazine that you used to get in the Seattle Times, and it was in color, gorgeous. They would have, tours of Seattle, and you had to come and see the totem pole. This was an icon. Any of you remember our Seattle Mayor, Greg Nichols, from the mid-2000s? There he is in the middle. That's him posing with his family. This was typical of so many families. And then here we have another story in 1966. Happy Hunting Ground. Not the best headline. But it was fixed up, and then it deteriorated, fixed up. And by this point, the city said it was too bug-eaten and the paint was faded too much that they needed to have a new totem pole. And so there were two Boeing engineers, Mike Morgan and Bob Flashman, who volunteered to carve it for free. And so the city said, sure, we'll do it. And a log was cut from Schmitz Park in West Seattle. And this is Mike Morgan and Bob Flashman. Mike's wife, these two guys are not alive anymore, but his wife is Diane, and she told me how she spread newsprint on the old pole and traced the old pole's markings so that this would become an exact replica. And these slides tell you the process of carving, and here are the rubbings, and then the patterns are being transferred, and the finishing work. And once it was finished, then it was ready to be painted, and this became kind of a community project in Seattle. Really a fun thing for people to join in on, a real point of pride, because people had fallen in love with the totem pole. So it was ready to be put up, and even the whole front page of the West Seattle Herald. Again, let's think about personal relationships. This is the Kiwanis Club having the dinner about the totem pole unveiling. At the unveiling, for which you saw the video, the two co-chairs of this event in 1966 were still alive, and we pulled them back for the raising at our museum. So they were among the 27 dignitaries. We had each one of them pulling on one of the streamers to give it some weight for the media to cover, give it some dignity and seriousness, and just a sense of history. More photos of the pole, and then, you know, the same thing happened to this pole. Remember, this is the replica. This isn't the original. And by 2006, the paint, as you can see, was really in bad shape. And the bugs had gotten to it. And so the city, what did I do to us? It's all right, we'll be back. I know we'll be back. Oh, there we go. So, it's always the tech, you know. So, we, it'll be back up. What's going on? All right. We had worked with the Parks Department on other projects, and in particular, the centennial, the sesquicentennial of the landing of the settlers in 2001. And also we had worked with Parks Department personnel on you all remember where you were for 9/11, that week, that horrible week, and people gathered on Alki, and there was a campaign to put these paper bag luminarias all up and down Alki, and there were 1,692 bags, and we have all of the bags. And so that was in 2001. We were in contact with the Parks Department a great deal. So the Parks Department said, we'll give it to you on the understanding that you will fix it up and unveil it at your museum. So that's what we did. This is the pole coming down. And we had volunteer labor. Alki Lumber, one of the oldest businesses in West Seattle. Again, this is not a cold call. This is somebody whom we know in the community, and we can go face to face and say, can you help get this log down to our museum? And this is where it sat for a couple of years on its side in our courtyard. And this is the end of the presentation, because this presentation was to inspire people to contribute money so that we could get the job done. And here was the sketch for how it was to look at our museum. You know, it's hard to promote something that you can't see. And so this was approximately the way it looked like. Now, just people, there are all kinds of people. I can't even go through the whole list, but here's a great example. I went to the volunteer fair at a booth at South Seattle College and recruited these 4 students to come and help leaflet the neighborhood to prepare them for the construction and the people who were coming to this ceremony. And so they're posing on our porch right before they go out and hand out leaflets to everybody. And then you're going to see some slides of the actual work being done. This is Roger Waterhouse of Artec. Some of you may know the firm Artec. And we were able to, I sat across the table, just like one of these tables, and asked Artec for an in-kind contribution for the services that they were providing us. And we got a 40% discount on the restoration work. This would normally have been a $20,000 project, and it was closer to 12. And so we built a relationship with them. I did a video with them when they were working on it in their warehouse, put it up, gave them prominence, recognition, and here they are just a week before, actually this is 2 weeks before the totem. We're bending rebar to put the cage together that'll go down into this hole to stabilize the totem pole. You can see the box that is being created for the rebar to go in, and then they're pouring the cement. It's a fascinating process. How often do you get to put a totem pole up? This is a 20 by or 30 by 30 by 30 box of concrete. And the amazing thing to me, just those of you who've done any kind of construction, the pole used to be held up with you can see the notches in the back all the way up the length of the 20-foot pole. But all they needed was a 6-foot armature. This was structural engineering that we had to pay for. But to hold up a 20-foot pole with only a 6-foot armature is pretty amazing, I think. And they're drilling the holes for the screws. And then came the day when the pole was delivered. Now the pole, oh gosh, there's so much to tell. You're looking at the pole and it's about to be righted on its end. But I want you to take a look at the 2 people on either end on the street. And these are media. This is Patrick Robinson on the right from the West Seattle Herald, and over on the left is Bettina Hansen, photographer for the Seattle Times. We had worked with Bettina, and here's Bettina crouching down to get her shot. We had worked with her on a couple of other stories, and so she already knew us from the one-on-one relationship. And so she was much more open to coming out and photographing this for the Times. And here's the pole going up into place, straight up. And you notice it's all covered up. We made sure that it was covered up because we were going for a ceremony of an unveiling. But this is all batting. It's not very, it doesn't look very nice, but and you can actually see the shape of the pole underneath it. And in this shape, this is what the Seattle Times printed the day before the ceremony was to happen. So not only do we get in the Times, but it got in the Times beforehand so that more people would come to the ceremony. What you saw in the video, that's the biggest event we've ever done in our organization's history. 1,300 people in the street. And let me back up a bit and say that that ceremony required 4 separate city permits and one-on-one, face-to-face conversations with the city, and even getting some exceptions. And any of you dealt with a setback in your front yard? At one point, the city said, well, you can't put it in your setback because you're supposed to leave a setback. And if we were abided by that, the only place we could put it is back in our courtyard, which it would have been hidden and nobody could see it. And so it took some going to the supervisor of the permit person and going to the city council member, Tom Rasmussen from West Seattle, who is on our advisory council, with whom we have worked literally for decades, back to when he was an aide to Jeanette Williams on the council in the 1980s. So again, it's pulling these people in that you have had a relationship built with over time. It's not an accident that this happens. A lot goes into it. Well, what's next? We wanted to have something that would be a dramatic way to unveil this, but it would also be attractive. Well, how are you going to cover up a 20-foot totem pole? What would you use? Any ideas? You know what this is?
Parachute.
It's a parachute. It's a used parachute, which we got at a very good bargain. And the person in the front is a volunteer, again, one-on-one relationships, a volunteer who is a member of our board, Terry Korsgaard, who also is a professional stagehand, and she loves putting things together, working with her hands to develop stage work. And so she adapted the used parachute and put the streamers on it, and boy, you can see she's very proud of her work. And without her special skill, we wouldn't have had a wonderful covering to unveil. It's sort of like putting a gift wrapping on a package. It doesn't last very long, but it's nice while it's there, right? So the last step was to put the sign in, and again, we got a discount on the sign because we had worked with Davis Sign before, and this is our facilities committee chair, Al Bentley, putting in the concrete. And again, to put the sign in took a city permit. They had to have somebody come out and check that it was deep enough and straight enough and all that. Now, I'm going to take you back a little ways. This is all leading up to a big ceremony. Well, we've done some big ceremonies in the past. This is 5 years ago now. Last year, it was 4 years ago. With the Alki Homestead, this is 1/2 block from us. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But I want you to know that we had done some of these big projects before where we involve a number of folks. The Alki Homestead had suffered damage in a fire in 2009. One of Seattle's most beloved landmarks, and certainly West Seattle's most beloved landmark, arguably. And there wasn't a lot of movement, and we've been working behind the scenes with that owner, with the city. Couldn't move this thing along, so we thought, let's do a group photo. The Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, affiliated with the National Trust, has a campaign called This Place Matters. So we adapted that for our use, created actually this sign, This Place Matters, had already been created and used up in Everett. We just used it here. And this photograph was taken on Independence Day of 2010 at our annual picnic. And so we had a critical mass, but we ended up having exactly 200 people and 1 dog. And we have some prominent folks, Dow Constantine, our county executive, our former mayor Greg Nichols, and a number of other people from West Seattle. But this was turned into a poster that was then distributed all around West Seattle to just build the awareness that there is a huge support for this landmark building to be restored. So there's one example of something where we brought a lot of people together. to show support. And then the next one, this comes from a few years later in 2013. This is something anybody can do, but again, it takes one-on-one relationship. We knew that the 100th birthday of Alki Elementary School was coming up. The PTA was going to put that together. We contacted the PTA, met with them one-on-one, and said, we would like to co-sponsor this with you. They said, well, we know what we want to do inside the building, and we said, sure, let's help get people to the event, and we'll take care of the outside of the building. And did a group photo of anybody was invited who's ever attended Alki Elementary School. So there are little 5-year-old kindergarten partners there, and there are 90-year-olds and every age in between. And this was made available to everybody who came to the ceremony. So we've done this kind of thing, and so we knew that our totem unveiling was a big deal. We wanted a lot of people there. So based on the relationship with Alki Elementary School, we went to talk to the principal and said, we've got this educational opportunity with the totem pole. We could have the kids come, they could hear a couple brief speeches, but they really are there to witness history and to make history. And as I said, and you heard me in the video, for the rest of their lives, they will say and know that they were there. And so to schedule that whole totem thing was dependent on when the school kids could come. That was the whole determining factor. And I had a slot of 10:30 in the morning or 2:30 in the afternoon, and I picked 10:30 because that's when the sun is shining on the pole. You know, logistics come into this, but you're working with the school. So on this magical day, how fortunate are you? Again, one-on-one relationships. Ed Murray grew up on Alki. He grew up in a house across the street from our museum where the totem pole went. Dow Constantine, our county executive, who is destined for a higher office, I guarantee you, he grew up next to Schmitz Park and went to Schmitz Park Elementary School. So we had Ed Murray walk the Alki kids to the ceremony. How did Schmitz Park get involved? I was at the Schmitz Park auction, sitting with Vicki Schmitz, the namesake family of the park, and on the other side was Garrett Kushner, the principal. And she says, tell Garrett about this thing you've got going with the totem. And after 10 minutes, he's saying, we got to be part of that too. So we grew from 350 students to adding 550 students, and we had more than 900 at the ceremony, and they all walked, led by their elected official, who was a graduate of each school. Again, one-on-one on one. Here's the scene that you saw. This is a screen grab from a separate video on our website. If you go there, it's a 3-minute video that crunches 2 hours into 3 minutes. It's a stop motion. It's really fun to watch the kids swarm in as if they're a river. And here they are at the exact moment of the unveiling. And then we have this succession of the shroud coming off the pole. And it was an amazing day. As you heard on the soundtrack, immediately afterward, we had the Duwamish tribe there to bless it. The Duwamish tribe, that's a whole separate story. We got a whole city is named for the chief of a tribe that's not recognized by the federal government. Whole separate story, but we maintain a good relationship with them. They have what they call the Duwamish Longhouse on the other side of the peninsula, and we involve them in our events, and we go to theirs. Well, it was no-brainer and also easy to say, we want you there to bless this unveiling. So we have the native drumming, and down at the bottom, Cecile Hansen in the hat provided a blessing at the ceremony. Many of you don't have the kind of fortunate situation we have. We have a nationally award-winning blog covering West Seattle, the West Seattle blog. But it doesn't matter, you don't have to have a nationally award-winning blog. Whatever your media is, if it's a weekly newspaper, a daily newspaper, a local blog, again, one-on-one relationships. There isn't probably a week or two goes by that I don't talk to Tracy on the phone or see her at an event and praise her about something that she has done in covering the area like a blanket, she knows that she's going to get good things to cover from us. And this event, they not only covered it, but this was the first event that they did live streaming coverage of. So you didn't even have to be there. You could be at home and in the moment experience this thing. And here is the tangible final result. Look at this photo. This is 1,300 people. And everybody always asks, well, what's that thing in the front? And again, it's another personal relationship thing. This is Bob Donegan. He's the owner of Ivers. You all know Ivers Acres and Plants. I was having lunch with him the week before, and I said, Bob, you got to come and be part of this photo, because Ivers owns the oldest business on Alki, Spud Fish and Chips. Oh, yeah. And he said, okay, I'll come, but can I bring the Spud? And I said, sure. Well, the funny thing about this, the way that the sun was angled, meant that we needed to have, oh, I got to tell you about the lift truck too. We had a lift truck here to get high, so you could see all of the faces. Every face is visible here. But the lift truck had to be down at the southeast corner, which meant that for the ceremony, after the unveiling, I had to have everybody turn around to pose for the photo. So everybody who thought they were in the front of the ceremony became in the back of the photo, and these guys who thought they were hiding out in the back really were in the front. But it still made for a fun photo. And this event was so involving. We have kids bringing their parents or other relatives or friends, and they come up to the pole and they start telling the story of the pole. Or they come up to this photo displayed at our museum, and they come to and they find themselves. They say, that's me. And then another result of this whole thing is that this got a lot of recognition regionally, which again is personal relationship. Oh, that's an awful reproduction up there, isn't it? Everybody's got an extreme skin cancer tan. That's at the Association of King County Historical Organizations. ACSHO is the acronym. And they gave us the Single Impact Event Award for the year. And we didn't just have one person there to get it, but we had everybody that we could associated with it. There are several board members. There are people related to the carvers. And that was a great night this past April. Down in the lower right, lo and behold, I get a phone call one day in late March from the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce saying, we are choosing you as our nonprofit of the year. And I'm sure that I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but the totem event was certainly the pinnacle that made that possible. And this is also the kind of thing that's great for an organization to get this kind of recognition. I don't miss a chamber event. Tonight, in about an hour and a half, is the monthly chamber after hours. That's the first after hours I've missed in 2 years. But we have 2 board members going to that. It's a tremendous opportunity. You all have chambers of commerce in your community. If you're looking for volunteers to be on your board or people who can be your champions in the community, again, the chance to just talk with them, find out what they're interested in, it's invaluable. The chamber is the kind of all-encompassing organization you want to be connected to. Now, I promised I would go back to the homestead. I'm going to take you 1 year hence. What was happening 5 years ago when we were so frustrated about the homestead and there was a fire and no action, continued on until this past spring. The homestead finally got a new owner, and so we created an event earlier this month that we call Group Hug for the Homestead. And here's some background. This is a set of photos from 100 years ago showing the Alki homestead. And then it was called Fir Lodge. And there's something kind of sneaky about this photo on the right, because this is the only photo we have from back then that shows our building in the same photo. Do you see this? This was what was called the carriage house for this. The stable and we're talking 1904 when this was built. And so there were no cars. And the first family who lived there for about 3 or 4 years, and then what took over for lodge was the Seattle Auto Club. You know, and they started to put in streets, and when the streets were platted, our building, what became our building, was moved further south, and it's on a corner 1/2 block from the homestead. Now, this was just one of many, many log buildings, but as you know, I mean, I've been told, Charles Payton was the first one to tell me this from King County, the predecessor to Fort Culture. He said that the preservation movement in the Northwest really didn't kick in until the 1980s. And before then, if something was old, you tore it down. So, log house after log house after log house was torn down, which was just a shame. There are only 3 left in West Seattle. And here's another view of it, and then just the elegance of the inside. And there's a whole set of photos of these. And here are people staying at Fur Lodge after it became the Auto Club. This is when it was a rooming house. And then this is the way that most people remember it. Anybody in this room who has been to the homestead, this is what you remember. Because in 1950 it changed to a restaurant, and the name changed to the Alki Homestead. And they advertised widely throughout the King County area. A little taste of old Seattle was its phrase, and you could get family-style dinners, and you wouldn't, in other words, you wouldn't get served on your plate. You'd get platters, and you'd pass them around the table, and the big, who am I hearing? What's
chicken?
The
Fried
chicken.
chicken.
Fried chicken is the one, the food. Anyway, this was obviously a beloved building in the community, and then there was a proprietor for 50 years, Doris Nelson, who became the face of it, and she died in 2004. Her estate sold it to a man who kept it going until 2009 when there was a fire. And here's some example. Here's the menu. Here's the fried chicken on your plate. Here's an ad from Seattle Magazine. Here's what one of the 2 main fireplaces looked like in there. Not anymore. Because in January 2009, there was a fire in the middle of the night, and it went up through the middle of the roof. Too many electrical outlets from Christmas lights plugged into one outlet. And here's the firefighters pulling this stuff out. I mean, just the hearts of West Seattle sank when this happened. And remember the photo of the fireplace? Well, this is what it looks like on the inside, so charred. And then over time, it just deteriorated. I mean, it looks like a ghost house, right? Even the old neon sign, the neon didn't work anymore. There hasn't been electrical in that place for 6 years. But like I said, there's been some good news. Preservation takes time to find a buyer, to be an investor. And we had a direct stake in this, not only because that's our mothership, that building, but because we hold an easement for the parking lot next to it. Because when our building became a museum 20 years ago, the city required that we have parking, and so we negotiated getting an easement from the owner. And so anybody buying this building has got their eyes on the parking lot too. So after some negotiation with the new owner, this is the press conference this past March. And I'm not showing this because I'm in the photo. What I want you to see is, here's the new owner, Dennis Schilling. Here's the former owner, Tom Lynn. Here's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. Here are 3 heritage people from Fort Culture, from Washington Trust, and behind them from Historic Seattle, Michael Richardson. And right here, Seattle City Councilman Tom Rasmussen. This is an example of our being able to put everybody together with a common message. Because there have been all of these differing messages over the last 6 years. Is the Historical Society holding this up, or why is the owner not doing anything? Now we've got a good news story of we're all pulling together on the same boat.
Who are you presenting that to? Who is your audience here?
The press.
Okay, so you like to hold a press conference.
Yes, we held a press conference to announce this. The deal was
Okay.
signed at 2:30 in the afternoon on Friday, and this is at 10 o'clock, or actually 9 o'clock, Saturday morning, the next morning. And we had it at our museum instead of in front of the homestead because it was raining. If it had been raining, we would have been outside. But,
Yeah.
and we had 4 TV stations there. It was big, big news. Here's the new owner of the homestead delivering the logs. The logs that are taped in blue are the first ones to be replaced. And I'm going back to remember this place matters. Well, here's what it looked like just a week before we decided, not decided, but a week before we had the group hug. And what is a group hug? Well, it's hard to see from this angle, but you'll see in a little bit. We looked at this front yard of the homestead, and it's a curved grass, and so it kind of embraces the building. And then here's the parking lot over here. There's room for a lot of kids. And we had so many comments. This has been a landmark event. Why not do it again? Why not make it an annual thing to connect with the kids? Have you ever heard the phrase, if you get the kids, you get the parents? I would submit that if you get the kids, you get everybody. Because we all know what preservation is about, but we're about getting the kids there. And so this is what I put together, just a crude sketch to show the principles of the schools, and that red mark is where the kids were to stand. What do you think the blue mark is?
The press.
No, that is a lift truck. The same lift truck company that I asked the year before to get the photographer up high. For this photo, the lift truck could only go up about half of its capability because, as you can see, if it had gone further up, the power line would have bisected the totem pole and ruined the photo. And I didn't want to work with Photoshop. So this one, instead of having power lines in front, we put the lift truck on the sidewalk. And it went up 26 feet tall. And the kids came. And they came. And these are just 2 schools, Alki Elementary School and Schmitz Park Elementary School. And here they are coming onto the site. And just crowding in. We had, again, this was just a 20-minute ceremony. But again, targeting who is going to be talking face-to-face to these kids. These are the 2 principals of the schools. Shannon Stanton and, I'm drawing a blank from Schmitz Park. She's the assistant principal. We got to introduce the new owner, Dennis Schelling. He doesn't like to give speeches, so he agreed to wave. We had Tom Rasmussen from the city council. He was pretty funny. He was trying to get the kids going in a fried chicken dinner chant. And then Dow, who was standing behind him, you can see him in the shadows, kind of gives him a poke, and he says, well, fried chicken dinner, or if it's the county executive, we can have fried tofu dinner. And here's Dow Constantine, and here we have the kids raising their hands up at the command of the photographer. But this is really the scene where you can see how high the lift truck is and how effective it is in capturing the whole scene. How effective? Here's our photo. And we now have this at our museum, and we can take it to events and show people in person. You can't even see a blade of grass. The kids are covering the whole thing. They truly are hugging this place, and it's a success story. And we're going to bring them back again once the restaurant, and it probably will be a restaurant again, once the restoration is completed in a year or 2, they'll be able, what they're doing here is celebrating the launch of restoration, but when they come back, they'll be celebrating the completion of it and the ability to go inside. And I just love this photo. Look at what the height does. I mean, you even get a little bit of Puget Sound. And, so I'm going to just check off. How many types of people have we talked about for relationships? We talked about public officials. We talked about school principals, we talked about permit people, yes, press, and not only press present, but press past. By having a relationship with the West Seattle Herald newspaper, I was able to get on the phone the publisher of the paper to open up the bound volume to take a photo on his cell phone to send me of the headline from 1966. You know? Talking about service clubs, talking about the Chamber of Commerce, we're talking about contractors, both paid and in kind. It's hard for you to see, perhaps, but the podium that's up on the front there and the sound system, there's a speaker on either side, is provided by a local sound company whom we used at previous year's ceremony, and we pay only a small pittance compared to the, I mean, they give us like a 90% discount on what they usually do because they want to be a part of this and to have their name out there. The lift truck, why would you, I mean, it's goodness of his heart for the community, but in our newsletter, on our website, everywhere, I think I didn't put it, did I put it down here? Yes, Pacific Rim Equipment Rental. I mean, sponsorship is about recognition, and it's about partnership. Volunteers, it's hard for you to see, but there are many of our volunteers there to crowd the kids into the right position. It takes a lot of people to pull this off. One thing I didn't mention, and I wanted you to, there's a takeaway from this that all the kids have, and that we have replica postcards from the homestead days from 100 years ago, and on the back, we printed out on the back, I was there. And so we gave away 1,050 postcards. I was there, Friday, June 5th, group hug for the homestead. 2015, restoration begins. We've even started to get some of these postcards back in the mail, though they can put them on their fridge or give them to their relatives or whatever. Can you believe it? A year ago, I had a kid say, "What's a postcard?" What's a postcard? So, I want to just see, talked about recognition. I mean, in one sense, all of this boils down to gratitude. It's all about gratitude to the community, gratitude to people. I mean, the older we get, I think we learn that lesson even more. But if you think at the root of gratitude, gratitude doesn't really happen unless you communicate it to them. And so again, it's looking somebody in the eye. And I had and I guess it goes without saying, enthusiasm is a big part of the package too. If you're not wearing it on your sleeve, nobody else is going to get it. You know, you got to be the most excited person in the room about this kind of stuff. And I have a good friend I've known for 30 years. We've helped each other out over the years. He's more of a professional fundraiser than I have been, although I am in that role now. And he said, the key to all of fundraising is 4 words. It's just 4 words. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Basically, take the risk. You know, what all of us are doing, how many are in here? Maybe about 20 of us. If we weren't here doing this now, I bet half of us would be staring at some screen somewhere or doing this. But there's no risk in that. It's one-way communication. You know, I'm taking a risk by trying to tell you a little bit about how these projects succeeded. You may not like what I'm saying, you know, but that's where the juice of life really is in taking that risk. It's pick up the phone, or it's being willing to look somebody in the eye and communicate and listen as well, obviously. We know in our hearts there really is no substitute for real-time communication. No matter what we're told, I mean, the financial forces of the world are perverting our language. Whoever invented social media as a word or as a phrase is trying to do an end run around what truly social media is. And I'm not trying to say I don't do it. You know, I've got an iPhone in my pocket. I'm a victim, and there are benefits. I'm not trying to say there are not benefits. But this is not the answer. The answer to making these kinds of events, these kinds of accomplishments that we all want for our organizations, they don't lie in your pocket. They don't lie on a computer screen. They are right where people are in the same room, breathing the same air as you. There is no substitute. And it's very symbolic that that's what we're all doing here right now. And I don't want to talk forever. I want to have some time for questions, but I want to give you a picture that kind of sums it all up. Guess who found herself in the photo? You know, kids do this all the time. That's me. And the reason they can do that is that they were there in person. They weren't looking at a computer. They weren't emailing somebody, texting somebody. They were right there. So I think what I'm going to do is ask you if you have questions. I'm happy to talk about any part of this. And what I'll do while we're doing the questions is I'm going to play some video from the group hug without any sound, just so that you can get an idea if it will actually come up. Because the video view from 26 feet high is pretty cool. All right. You've been very patient. You put up with me for about an hour. Questions, comments, what would you like to talk about? Yeah.
I'm just curious about the original location of the first totem pole.
Yes.
So are you ever going to, it's a landmark, so.
I did not cover that. Thank you for asking. Remember I said there was an original one in 39, and then it was replaced in 66. And then the second one was replaced in 2006. So what's there now? The city put in a new pole. But it was not a colorful one like from Alaska and BC. It was more typical of the Duwamish tribe. And it is what's called a story pole. And it tells the story of the landing at Alki. And it even has the bow of a ship sticking out from it, and it has wings up on the top. But it is not painted. Maybe I should have brought a photo of that. But if any of you comes to West Seattle and you come up Admiral Way and turn the corner, you will see the pole there. Now there are people who are disappointed that it's not one of the colorful ones that we all know and love, right? But this is a good learning opportunity for us all to know what different cultures do in different parts of the world. And over time, I think that people will come to appreciate that one just like the other one. But you've got to keep telling that story. Now we have the older pole, the replica, at our museum. And so it's kind of like having your cake and eat it too. You know, you've got the one that's been there for 75 years, and then you've got the newer one, and you can tell the story of both. And one thing I failed to say also, I'll get to in just a second, is that on the day that we unveiled the totem pole, we also launched an exhibit on totem poles inside our museum that tells the very story that I'm talking about, not just about the 3 poles, but about totem poles in general. There's one, I mean, I'm learning about this stuff all the time. You know, I didn't know all this stuff 2 or 3 years ago. And one thing is that we, on a surface level, we think, oh, a totem pole tells a story. Well, yes and no. It does tell a story, but can we discern it? It's not that easy, because the original pole for this was carved in 1901, and how do we know what the story is? Most native poles are carved for private purposes up in the Queen Charlotte Islands. You know, it's for an honorific or a memorial, and we don't know. We can guess because we can tell what the characters are: a beaver, a bear, a fish, a whale. But what is the story? It's open to interpretation. And then you get the whole aspect of people don't know the origin, and so it becomes a part of our culture. It's not just native culture. I mean, it's a transplanted thing that we all know and love. Yeah?
you involved Haida Nation or Tlingit Nation in this project? And how early did you bring in the Duwamish Nation?
We brought in the Duwamish from the very beginning to consult with them, not only on the pole restoration, but or the ceremony, but the restoration. No, we did not, and perhaps we should have. That's a project waiting to happen. It's a great question, and I haven't had it before, and I appreciate you asking it. I wish I'd thought of that a few years back. Yeah.
This might be somewhat of a different animal, but when you write a grant, there's very strict rules about how you're supposed to do it. And they seem to discourage and sometimes don't even allow, any type of personal communication as part of the process. And I've always thought that, well, if I could communicate personally, that would make the difference between us sitting in a pile of papers and us actually getting the grant. Do you have any comments about that, or how to get around that?
It's very similar to a comment in the Human Resources panel earlier. These days, you think, there was talk of millennials, well, probably what a millennial thinks of applying for a job is sending an email out in 5 minutes, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to go and maybe turn it in person, get to know somebody there, maybe do an informational interview before there's even an opening. All of these old-fashioned, so-called old-fashioned values are kind of out the window with this access we have to information. And the same thing, and there are reasons for that now, that employers don't want to encourage the in-person because they get inundated. Well, the same thing is true for granting organizations. But I will tell you that not all granting organizations are the same. Some encourage you to just fill in the form and turn it in, and it's a faceless exchange of information. But a big exception to that in our county is the county grant organization called For Culture. And Eric Taylor is the heritage lead, Flo Lentz is the preservation lead, and you bet I know those people quite well. You heard Eric say earlier today that For Culture is primarily a funding organization, and that's probably accurate, but they also are huge into education and training. And if you don't go to those trainings and interact with the For Culture trainers and with Eric himself, then you're probably not going to get the kind of grant success with For Culture that you would have if they don't even know who you are. They encourage one-on-one contact. If you're having trouble trying to fit your project into an application, then they encourage you to do one-on-one phone calls or to come down and visit them. They have how-to seminars on how to fill out a grant. They have deadlines throughout the year, and they have several workshops for each of those opportunities. So it's not all the same. I can only hope that there are more like that. In some ways, it's something lost and something gained with the technology, and there's definitely something lost. Yeah.
Well, and we've had some success with inviting members of the board of different granting organizations to our events that aren't necessarily a fundraising event, but just a fun community event to show off our programs.
Sure.
So they can.
Like prior to writing the grant, in other words?
Prior
say,
to,
obviously,
or-
that might be
yeah.
a thought,
In other words, it's like an informational interview.
Obviously.
Go get your interview when there's not a job at stake, and that's when the best communication can happen, so that when the job opportunity does come up, they think of you. Well, I would say applying for a grant is I just would say have no fear. Go find out what you can find out. If the door is closed to you, okay, you found that out, but don't assume that it's closed to you. That's one way to be sure you won't have any contact.
It's a good old-fashioned mailing list. Make sure every one of your legislators, all of the potential donors, heads of, chambers, just put them on your mailing list. Make sure they get everything all the time.
How many of you use Past Perfect or something similar to that? So you create mailing lists for your physical mail and your email. Well, there's a membership list, but there's also a courtesy list. That's what you're talking about. And there's a bunch of people on that courtesy list who may not be paying dues, but there's great benefit in having them on that. Anything else you'd like to talk about? Yeah?
What was your goal or your purpose for the group hug?
I guess I can answer that really simply by saying outreach. But it goes more deep than that. But if there was one word, it's outreach. My position may be of interest to you. We're a very small organization. You know, our budget is $100,000. 2 years ago, it was 60. 3 years ago, there was some of you heard of the MAP Museum Assessment Project at the American Alliance of Museums. We had a MAP project and a consultant come in. And at that time, up until that time, we had only had a part-time museum manager, what I would call as a walls-in person, taking care of the museum. We didn't have a walls-out person. And what's the word? Consultant, I'm thinking of. He said he wrote up a thick report of recommendations after doing a bunch of interviews and looking at our self-assessment. And the number one recommendation was, if you don't create an executive director position to take care of fundraising, outreach, and volunteer recruitment, you're going to die. And I've been on the board on and off for 30 years at our organization, and I got off the board immediately because I knew I might want to apply for that job, and I didn't want to be a part of trying to create a job that I might be seeking. And so for all of 2012, I was off the board, and the board created the job, and I applied for it, and there were interviews, and then they had the foolishness to hire me. And I started January of 2013. But those three words are in my head all the time: fundraising, outreach, and volunteer recruitment. Basically, walls out. If I'm in the museum too much, I'm not doing my job. My job is to be out there at chamber events or one-on-ones with potential donors or volunteers. And this kind of a thing, it builds, it goes back to the personal relationships. There's Tom Rasmussen talking. We give him a platform to talk to 1,000 kids and another 100 parents. I mean, he loves that. That's does that fall into outreach? Yes, but it's also government relations. It also is fundraising. Tom, for this project, the Totem Pole project, he contributed $5,000 toward this project. So his fundraising is in there as well. I'll tell you, one of the best relationships that this helped foster, even though he's kind of shy, is with the owner of the building. This has been a huge turnaround in our relationship with the owner of the homestead. We didn't have this kind of relationship with the former owner. And because of his courage and vision, and I mean, to deal with the Seattle Landmarks Preservation Board when you've never dealt with that before, and being a contractor, he's taking a step into the unknown. And we need to encourage him as best we can so that we keep our eye on the prize and that building gets restored. We're all looking forward to being able, fried chicken or not, be able to get in that building again and have it accessible to the public. So it's multiple faceted. I mean, certainly we got great media coverage for it. But just think, I would go back to the kids. Think of those kids. I mean, they're going to be your age someday. We have people our age who were around in West Seattle and went to the ceremony in 1952 when the Statue of Liberty replica was unveiled on Alki Beach. 1952. So they're, maybe 70 or so right now. And they remember that day. And what is that going to do to you as you grow up and you develop your connections to the community and you care more about the community? Maybe you even become a part of this organization. I go back to the kids. When you got the kids, you got everything. Yeah?
How did you introduce the principals? I mean, is this during the school year?
Yes,
How do you-
this was Friday, June
What was,
5th.
what was the thing that got the principals to basically have kids out of school down here?
This is a field trip. They get to learn about the place through some speakers. They get to make history and be part of a photo that will follow them the rest of their life. Maybe they'll get lunch on the beach afterward. It's exercise. I mean, there are a lot of, what better field trip could you have, you know? For them to, what the principals spoke about, and I could rewind and you can listen if you wanted, was the reason we are here is that we are building community. And that theme of a presentation, I think, resonates very strongly with the principals. And I tell you, it didn't take anything this time around to get them to say, sure, we'll do it. Because we'd done it the previous year, and it worked out so well. And you know, you can see that there are kids here, but there are a lot of parents in that audience. A lot of the same kids from last year, parents who didn't come to the one last year, but they came this year because they knew it would be special. You know, it's almost like a family bonding thing. And I heard several comments, and you can see on the blog too, that thank goodness it was a short ceremony. Because if it's focused, then they'll remember it better than if it was some long thing and they're restless. One thing I didn't mention, and I'm sorry, but a key part of this didn't just happen to snap of the fingers on this day. Each school has an assembly on the Monday beginning each week, an all-school assembly where they get up to date on what's going on that week. I spoke at each assembly of those schools to get them ripped up. I did a little PowerPoint with them, and so they were ready and they were anticipating. And what I've heard from so many people, not only this one but the year before, was how well behaved they were. And I think part of it was that they got prepared. And then during the next 4 days, their teachers helped prepare them too. The younger grades, we gave them homestead coloring sheets. Some of them wrote essays on the homestead. So it was more than just the ceremony. Are we running out? I don't know. I don't want to keep you longer than... We got 2 more minutes? I don't want to save 1 minute, but go ahead.
Okay, now real quick, one interesting phenomenon I've come across in my years of fundraising is invariably the first question when you approach a potential funder is, well, who else is involved? How much money have you already raised? It's almost as if they're reticent to be the first one to stick their toe in the water.
Sure.
And it's kind of like when you're going for a job and you want to get experience, the first question you're asked
What is
how
your
much experience you have? Well, how do you get experience if you can't get a job? So I don't know if you just had any comments, advice.
Your point is very well taken. We, major donors, we have what we call the Challenge Fund, and that's anybody who contributes in the year $1,000 or more. And I am racking up challenge funders all year long to challenge people. It's called the Challenge Fund, so that at our gala in November, the people in the room will see those names on the wall and be inspired to give in like kind. So each time I get a challenge funder, I add them to the list, and when I'm talking to a potential donor, I tell them about the other challenge funders who are already on the list. We already have 8 challenge funders at a total of $12,500. We're way ahead of last year. I mean, I can't say, I can't say that it's a direct result of this, but I think that all of these things add up, and it's the one-on-one. And there's a whole seminar to be done on fundraising itself, but it's not, you don't ever go to a donor and ask them for money the first meeting. That's, you, basically, the best kind of fundraising is when you're having a conversation with them and you get to the point where they say, how can I help you? And it happens. It does happen. It's going out to coffee, going out to lunch, seeing them in the grocery store. It's, as my friend Gregory says, it's seeing them on aisle 4 at QFC. Any other questions? I have something fun to show you. It's very short, I promise. If you think that I'm just making this up, then I have somebody to give you a confirmation. You all seen the movie Jerry Maguire?
The key to this business is personal relationships. I love getting up in the morning. I clap my hands and say, this is going to be a great day. Unless you love everybody, you can't sell anybody. Roll with the punches. Tomorrow's another day. If this is empty, this doesn't matter. Hey, I don't have all the answers. In life, to be honest, I've failed as much as I've succeeded. But I love my wife. I love my life. And I wish you my kind of success.
Thank you very much.